egress safely from the rocket.
Sí.
Cabros, sí. Mano. Vamos a una musiquita para escuchar esto mientras.
And just a reminder today, just this first attempt, we're going to be right back here, looking like on Saturday for attempt number 2. Launch America's not going anywhere. still on the track to get Bob and Doug into space, get this Crew Dragon up to the International Space Station. So it's always good if you're gonna scrub. Probably rather scrub for weather than an issue on either Falcon 9 or Dragon. And we weren't tracking any issues with the flight systems throughout our countdown today. Everything passed with leak checks on the hatches and the crew suits. All the communications working great. All the teams were ready to go. So, as John and I said, always nice to have a little bit more practice, and we'll be right back at it on Saturday.
Dale, loco, lanzate. Bueno, han estado 4 horas sentado ahí, loco.
Sí, mon. 4.
Yes.
Oye, qué bonita la playa, mon.
De más.
Hey, Dan,
Están en las Islas
another
Mar.
thought crossed my mind while I'm watching
¿Cuál?
the diagram here showing fuel is just about off. First and second stage we're down.
Igual yo no creo en ni una weá, pero quiero ver la weá así como para cachar qué bola andan los culeros.
Yep, getting the announcement. Stage 2 fuels at 20%, stage 1 LOX is under 10%. So just continuing to come off of the vehicle as expected. On the monitor, Bob and
Esta isla están cerca de Australia.
The system is armed, as we've mentioned. If there is
Están entre
anything that we're happening
la isla de Pascua y Japón.
now, they still have the viable pad abort means, something that we demonstrated way back in 2015 on one of these webcasts when we fired the Dragon capsule using the 8 Super Dracos off of the launch pad and it splashed down offshore in the Atlantic Ocean. So they're staying there with the system armed until all the hazards are essentially removed and we bring the crew out.
¿Pusiste música, hermano?
Sí, pero bajito. O sea, pero es que tú lo estés viendo en el YouTube.
We're going to listen
Sí.
to
Entonces,
launch director talking to the weather officer.
hay que esperar nomás.
¿Cachaste que adentro es como tallas LED? Talla. Touch. 0 botones.
If you're just now tuning in, we did not launch today. We did have a scrub because of weather, but as we were saying, we are looking forward to trying this again on Saturday. Our launch time on Saturday will be another instantaneous window, so we'll have to have the weather cooperate again. And that launch time will be at 3:22 p.m. Eastern. I think our last weather update put us at about 40% probability of violation. John, I can check me real quick.
Yeah, Dan, what I saw coming out of the Air Force was 40% probability of violation, I believe. It's always tough because they report in terms of violation and the optimists have to subtract that from 100% to go, hey, 60% chance, I'll plan my
Parece que no lo van a hacer por el clima,
We
weón.
were listening, the SpaceX launch director, Mike Taylor, was talking to the
Algo así
launch
está
weather
diciendo,
officer asking about the 3 criteria that scrubbed us today. It sounds like in another minute or two, the lightning and the attached anvil cloud rules will clear. The field mill rule charge in the atmosphere is still bouncing around, and so hey, we may need several more minutes before that one would clear.
¿Cómo estar 4
So
horas
we
para
need even
nada?
longer than 10 minutes in the window today, it looks like, for all the rules to clear. That brings up what I wanted to mention a little while ago. I got lost listening to the weather brief. But there are a lot of folks who are going, why an instantaneous launch window for Falcon 9 and Dragon? Now, typically when we go to the space station, when we do the mission planning, it's an instantaneous window. There may be enough performance in the rocket to launch somewhere in a 5-minute period, but you've got to pick a time in there. But in the case of Falcon 9, once we start propellant load at T-minus 35 minutes, it doesn't matter so much if you can move 5 or 10 minutes left or right, because the whole sequence is scripted. We do the flight announcement.
That is, and those of you
Ability. One of the good things, though, the vehicle appeared to be in great task.
throw the plane.
Arm the launch escape system.
Talking about earlier, resonated with really.
Hermanos, tuvieron caleta de rato
A
para
hand in seeing.
As the crew's moving in, so everything.
It's 2 hours and 35 minutes, so just under 15 minutes from now is when the astronauts will ingress. That's the term we use for climbing into the
Looking around the world, we need to make sure conditions are acceptable. Case which some communication satellites have, we could actually get down to almost zero, hold the count, detank the Falcon 9, wait a while, it takes us about an hour and a half, reload a whole new batch of cold liquid oxygen and fuel from the big storage tank that we've got there at pad 39A and try to launch again. But in that case, you have to be able to launch, about an hour and a half or so later after you scrub. And in the case of the International Space Station, an hour and a half from now, it's nowhere near where we need to be to get to orbit with the performance of the Falcon 9 and the Dragon. So today, it's a combination. We start the day with a 1 second window.
Yeah, just informing you, it's
but
been
once
2
we
hours,
get inside of 35 minutes, it becomes an instantaneous window for the Falcon 9, regardless of what the customer may be able to give us. So there's a little explanation for folks who are wondering why we have such a tight window.
Realmente van a
Right now, it looks like we are bringing the last bits of fuel and liquid oxygen is just about off of the stage.
Están diciendo que los guanes tienen que hacer como una weá y que tienen que ir y devolverse una hora y media, se tienen que demorar, no sé, weón.
And we'll wait to hear that we're clear. Call for Bob and Doug to go ahead and disarm the launch escape system, and the crew access arm will come back out, center itself around the hatch, and the ingress team will go up there and open the hatch.
Thank you for the science lesson, John I.
Hey, no charge.
Much appreciated.
We did hear a quick call to the crew there. We should be just under 10 minutes away from that prop offload completing. It looks like we're just tracking
Stage 2
the
fuel
RP1
offload is complete.
And there we have the confirmation. Stage 2 offload's complete. And we should have now just the RP1 densified propellant for the RP1 is here. We should be under 10%, a little under 10 minutes until that's off. And then we'll step through those events we were discussing where they'll be able to disarm the launch escape system, get the arm back out there, and Bob and Doug can begin to exit the Dragon spacecraft.
Como que lo sacaron a puro wear así.
Still not the friendliest skies in the background.
That is Florida, though. The weather is constantly changing over there, which is why we always have to keep an eye on it through every single launch that we have out there. Bob and Doug are patiently waiting. As you can see, that is a live view of them on the Crew Dragon vehicle as they're waiting prop offload to complete. Second stage prop offload is complete. We are just waiting on first stage to complete.
Stage 1 LOX offload is complete. Waiting on stage 1 fuel, roughly 5 minutes or so.
And again, the launch escape system is still armed. We are waiting for a prop offload to complete before they disarm that, and then they will be able to egress from the Crew Dragon vehicle.
And we just heard we should be just under 5 minutes away from the last of that fuel coming out of the Falcon 9 first stage. And then we'll see those events start to pick back up, and we'll see the crew arm swing back out. They've been in those seats for a couple hours now. They typically get inside of Dragon a little over 2.5 hours ahead of launch. So they've been strapped into these seats for quite a while. They are custom sized though, so they're as comfortable and as snug as possible. Obviously, since they're going to be in them for a really long time, but most importantly, when you're doing that splashdown at the very end of the mission, it's your car seat, and splashing down or landing on land is not the most gentle of procedures in a capsule. So just really making sure that they're snug inside of that Dragon capsule. But we should be a little under 5 minutes away from the prop offload being completed.
As Dan mentioned, those suits are custom made, but the suits are also custom fit for each astronaut as well. They do remain on Crew Dragon for this mission for almost 24 hours about. So we do want to make sure that they are comfortable and make sure that the suits and the seats are comfortable enough for them to stay in that position for a while. I believe when they get into orbit, they are allowed to get out of their seats and get a little bit more comfortable, but it's a long ride for them.
Yeah, once they do get on orbit, they are able to get out of the seats and actually out of their suits too, since for this flight path today, it was going to take them about 19 hours. So Bob and Doug would actually have had about 8 hours to sleep on board the Dragon capsule. So we weren't able to launch today, though. The rendezvous on Saturday should be very similar to what we would have had if we launched today, where it'll take them about 19 hours to get to the International Space Station. So they'll launch and they'll have a number of different events that we'll be able to walk you through, including manual piloting of Dragon and just really putting the spacecraft through all of the paces before it arrives at the International Space Station. Because again, this is a test flight, and this is this last test before we certify the Dragon spacecraft for regular crewed flights, which will just be bringing up those long duration, 6-month, maybe even a year-long missions.
Right. And it should be a very exciting test flight because it's pretty much like an actual mission. When Bob and Doug get on the station, they will be performing some research while they're up there and performing tests and doing some final things for this demonstration mission.
But I mean, just for right now, we are just going to continue to stay with them until we see them come out of Dragon, because the launch escape system's still armed while we wait for this propellant offload to complete. That's just done as a safety measure. Anytime you have rocket propellants beneath you, you want to make sure that we have a good way for them to get out of the way. And so we should be within just a couple of minutes for that final bit of RP1 coming off the first stage, and then we'll hear the crew get the go to disarm that launch escape system. We'll see the crew access arm swing back in. But if you're just tuning in, expecting them to be in space, we did have a scrub today due to weather. Our next launch attempt is going to be this Saturday, May 30th at 3:22 p.m. Eastern Time. And just like we did today, we're going to be bringing you every single step of the way. It's going to look a little familiar if you watched all of today's, but it's going to be just as exciting.
I can imagine it might even be more exciting with all the anticipation that we've hyped this launch up for, with already going through it all today. But again, the more practice we have, the better off we will be. Hopefully next launch attempt we will have a flawless launch and actually be able to lift off with good weather.
Yeah, weather is going to be the big thing that we'll continue to watch. That was the culprit today for our scrub. And our initial reports already looking at about 40% possibility of violation, probability of violation. So as John and I was saying, the optimists in us have to say that's 60% good. So we're gonna look at the good side of this. That's roughly what we were in the days leading up to this. We won't have a rogue tropical storm forming off of South Carolina on us on Saturday, but Florida weather will always be dynamic, so we'll just continue to track and hopefully get a good chance hit that window on Saturday.
And just a reminder, everything else on the vehicle and for the mission was looking good today. It was just the weather, which, as John I said earlier, and Lauren even referred to him mentioning this, weather is the one thing that we actually cannot control on our missions. So unfortunately, it did cause us to scrub today, but the vehicles are healthy. Bob and Doug were ready, and they should be ready to go again with the next launch attempt on Saturday.
Just looking at our data, it looks like that RP1 is just about all out. So we'll just kind of stand by for a few more moments. Hopefully we get that call soon, John I.
Yeah, I was going to, while we're waiting to hear the call that the last percentage of fuel is off, I was going to comment on Jesse's discussion about it was just the weather. I think during this countdown, there were more words said about the weather than everything else. I'm listening right now to a weather discussion in the background.
Yeah, and again, for people wondering if we knew that we did have bad weather, you know, even from this morning, again, we do monitor this all the way down to the final minutes of the countdown. And with Florida weather being pretty sporadic, sometimes we have even hurricanes coming through or bad weather coming through and passing 20 minutes later and having good weather for a launch. So this is why we continued to attempt to launch today, but unfortunately for T0 today, weather was not on our side.
Yeah, Jesse, this is John again. I dropped off to listen to a weather discussion. They were just giving the times. The lightning rule went green, so we could have gone without a lightning concern. The attached anvil rule cleared, but the field mill rule is expected to clear at 58 minutes after the hour. So that's another 4.5 minutes from now. So we were close, but we needed about 25 minutes later launch time. It does remind me, at risk of offending some people, but the old saying that says, it's better to be on the ground wishing you were flying than flying wishing you were on the ground.
Yes, definitely. Safety first, always, and making sure that when Bob and Doug do fly, they are flying safely and as planned. So again, this is standard procedure for us to make sure that they do have a safe flight to the International Space Station.
All right, well, for now, we're just continuing to stand by, expecting the call that all of that prop has now been offloaded from Falcon 9.
All right, venting vehicle tanks to nominal TP set point for Coringress.
No sé, que no cacho si la wea.
At this moment, the launch escape system still armed. Once the load is complete, that'll be the next step in our procedures to have Bob and Doug be out of Dragon.
LD, countdown 1. LD. We have the prompt here for nominal crew egress.
Okay, so we're ready for launch escape system disarm?
As affirmed, ready for launch escape disarm.
MD copies. You guys are ready?
Yeah, launch team's ready. Go ahead and advise the crew.
Yeah, Dragon SpaceX, you copy that discussion. So with that, you are go for disarming launch escape system per section 2 of 5.100.
We'll put that work. Section 2, disarming the launch escape system.
All right, that was the call we were waiting for, propelling off of Falcon 9. So Doug Hurley, Bob Ankin now going to disarm the launch escape system on Dragon. And once that's disarmed, those 8 Super Draco engines will be out of the mix.
SpaceX Dragon launch escape system has been disarmed into Alpha Decimal 3.
Copy that. We concur.
And showing then confirmed the launch escape system has been disarmed.
And Dragon SpaceX, with that confirmation, you are go to open your visors and proceed to section 3.
Okay, we'll open the visors and go to section 3.
As you heard and you can see, Bob and Doug can now open their visors and get ready for exiting the vehicle. Again, they kept their visors on while the launch escape system was armed, while prop offloading was continuing, and that is just to make sure that they are safe. Now that there's no more propellant on any of the vehicles, they are safe to have disarmed the launch escape system and now are getting ready for that crew arm to swing back, the hatch to open, and for them to egress.
SpaceX Dragon with an update. We're holding in 3.4 and we're ready for seat rotation when you are.
Copy that. We'll wait for the closeout team to open the hatch and verify clearance, and then we can execute seat rotation.
There's that crew arm swinging back towards Dragon. Once that crew arm is in place, they will be able to open the hatch on Crew Dragon. Bob and Doug's seats will rotate back out of launch position so that they can safely get out of their seats and egress the vehicle.
And we heard they'll have what they call nominal egress, so just the normal procedures for getting them out of the capsule. That means the same closeout team that was there to get them in will be able to assist as they come out. They'll arrive and get that hatch open, and then they'll be able to rotate the seats. That'll rotate Bob and Doug pretty much forward, where they'll be in the original position that the seats were configured when they made their way into Dragon. It just gets them a little bit out and under the displays and makes getting in and out of the capsule a little bit easier. They've been in those seats for about 3 hours at this point, so definitely a long day for the crew. As they woke up about 6 hours prior to our T-0, had their breakfast, which we confirmed was steak and eggs, at least for Doug Hurley. And then they proceeded through all of the suit up and the trip to the pad, making their way inside Dragon, where they've been for about the last 3 hours at this point. We were on track for an on-time liftoff right at 4:33 p.m. Eastern time, but did have to scrub a little under 17 minutes before launch due to weather. So for now, we've offloaded all of the propellant off of Falcon 9. The launch escape system has been disarmed. That crew access arm is back right up next to Dragon, as you can see in that view on the left. Pretty soon we'll see the teams arrive to get the hatch open, get Bob and Doug out, and they'll make their way back to crew quarters and their quarantine. It is important to note that throughout the entire process of them getting into Dragon, suiting up all of those different steps, they maintain that same quarantine that they've been in since for about 2 weeks now, and that is specifically for events like today, where we have to scrub and just go to another day. So we don't want to break that quarantine once we're putting them into that launch vehicle. And that's a standard quarantine that we have for any crew members flying to the International Space Station. The current COVID-19 pandemic obviously puts a little bit of extra pressure and a little bit of an extra spotlight on that, but they're following a lot of the same procedures that we have in place just to keep crew members healthy before they go and spend several months in space in an enclosed environment with just a couple of other people.
Right, and it's a little bit more difficult to get them help on the space station, right? So we want to make sure that when they do head up to the space station, that they are fully healthy. So this, again, is standard procedure, not just because of this pandemic that's going on. This is a standard procedure for astronauts to quarantine prior to heading to the station. And as Dan mentioned, this is a standard procedure to exit the vehicle as well. We did scrub today, but this is not an emergency state. This is standard procedure. This is something that is practiced and rehearsed and made sure that we do follow our standard procedures to make sure that everything is still safe. Bob and Doug exit safely and go back into quarantine and get ready for our next launch attempt.
Looks like they're getting a chance to stretch their legs, though.
Yeah.
Dan, Jesse, I'm monitoring along in the scrub procedure right now. They're getting the goes to get the folks back to the pad, the crew that'll open the hatch. So they have notified the team chief, launch engineering, to return to the pad. As a reminder, around the pad, the Air Force and NASA set up roadblocks to make sure nobody gets into the hazard area. So they will head to the roadblocks, they'll pull them open so that they can drive to the pad. So launch director, I think, is estimating it's still about 15 minutes for the crew to drive all the way down out to 39A, get up the tower, and then begin operations on the hatch. They have confirmed that the purge of the Dragon service section, which is nitrogen during the countdown to avoid an oxygen leak, that is back on air now. The crew access arm is on air, so they're ready for the egress team to get up into the tower. But it's going to take them a little bit still, I think, to drive down the road in the vehicles and go up the elevator. but everything continuing to run per a normal scrub countdown, which we have had the opportunity to practice with the crew in, for example, the dry dress rehearsal last Saturday after we had done the static fire of the Falcon 9 the day before.
I've been seeing a few questions, people asking why aren't we just trying to launch tomorrow? As John and I was talking us through, there's some very specific times you have to identify when you're going to be able to link up with the International Space Station. You'll only have so much fuel, which can only generate so much energy to make sure you're going to intersect with the station, which is flying at over 17,000 miles an hour. So you're hitting one bullet with another bullet. Some of our other launch attempts are able to make it to station, but have much longer times.
To prevent us from losing comms, we're going to be switching to umbilical at this time. I'm going to be unmerging Countdown 1, but we'll keep you updated here on Dragon Ground.
Okay, yeah, we see the Cedrus countdown with a little over 3 minutes. We'll stand by for your next call on umbilical.
Copy.
The crew getting a call, they're just going to reconfigure some communications. But as to why we're not launching, say, tomorrow...
And core on Countdown 1, loops are merged.
But when we pick our launch attempts, we also have to take in mind some of the human factors of these attempts. Some of these other launch attempts may exist, but it would require Dragon taking in excess of 30 or more hours potentially to reach the station, which could wreak some havoc with the sleep shifts cycles, not only for Bob and Doug, but also for the crew on board station that has to line up their sleep schedule with Bob and Doug as they arrive. And the crews on station and Bob and Doug will be operating off of Greenwich Mean Time once they get there.
Dragon SpaceX, comm check umbilical.
SpaceX Dragon, loud and clear on umbilical.
Copy, heavy the same.
Still getting good comm between the crew and the core here in Hawthorne. But really, just to sum it up, we pick our launch attempts for a number of reasons, not just can we make it to the station, but just how long is it going to take to get there. And that's why Saturday is going to be our best option. We're going to be targeting that one at 3:22 p.m. Eastern time for our next attempt. And it'll be a little over 19, maybe a little over 20 hours until we actually arrive at the space station, if we're able to get off the ground on Saturday.
And this gives Bob and Doug, a few days to kind of shake off the nerves from today's launch attempt, give them some more time to rest, and again get ready for our launch attempt on Saturday.
Sí, bueno, la puedo sacar, no puedo hacer nada si no tengo esta clave. No sé qué hacer.
If you're just now joining us, we did scrub our Demonstration 2 mission today. And as John mentioned, we are waiting for the egress team to make it back to the launch pad, head up the tower, and help the crew, or help Bob and Doug egress the vehicle.
Serían llegar a los termómetros digitales y saber cuándo llegan. Termómetros digitales.
Dragon SpaceX for closeout team status.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the closeout team has arrived at the pad and they are proceeding to the White Room.
Copy that.
You heard that call out. The egress team is at the pad and are proceeding to meet Bob and Doug in the White Room, where they can open the hatch and help them exit the vehicle.
Yep, and we'll continue to stick with Bob and Doug until we see that hatch get open and them start to make their way out.
Tiene antena Wi-Fi y mouse inalámbrico.
Oh, and there we can get some views once
La
more back at the
para
pad. You can
conectarme
see
directo a un computador
that
a través
egress
de
team
USB.
moving back in. They were wearing the black clean suits that we saw as they were helping Bob and Doug get into the Dragon just several hours ago. They're now going to get on the elevator, make their way back up, down the crew access arm, and then we'll get that Dragon side hatch open.
And as we saw earlier, this is a very tall structure, but that elevator is pretty quick there. So we saw them enter the bottom of the tower. It should be a very short time before they make it to the top and are able to get to the White Room and open the hatch for Bob and Doug.
¿Lo mouse inalámbrico? Ya creo que... espérate, acá hay una pregunta muy loca, po. Onda, ¿tienen cables para conectar esta cámara al PC o notebook y una cámara que tiene BNC? Sería de BNC a USB, algo así, ¿no?
It should just be a few more moments. We'll see that closeout team make their
digo
way
que no.
back into the crew access arm and down the hatchway. And again, if you are just now tuning in, we did have that scrub just about a little under 17 minutes before launch.
Que se compró la cuestión, no
Our
le
next
funcionó.
launch attempt is going to be this Saturday,
No,
May
creo que no.
30th. Launch time. It's going to be another instantaneous
Ya la cosa
launch
es que
time.
quiere digo
It's
que
going
venga
to
para acá a
be
probarlo porque dice
3:22
que,
p.m.
que es un
Eastern time
RCA,
over there
un
in
HDMI
Florida.
RCA. Desde un deco.
Assuming an on-time launch, it'll
¿Lo
be
trae acá
a
para
pretty
revisarlo?
similar flight that we were looking at today, where it'll be roughly about 19 hours before they make that initial contact to the International Space Station. They'll get on orbit and execute a series of 5 different burns to gradually raise their orbit until they're just a few hundred meters below the station, maybe a few kilometers behind, and then they'll do all of the final approach initiation maneuvers. And by that point, the team here in Hawthorne will be working very closely with the team down in Houston in the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Weather for Saturday still not ideal, but it's roughly what we started out with today, where we have about a 40% chance, possibility of violation, and it'll be tracking a lot of the same issues with cumulus clouds and potential precipitation. We'll also be keeping an eye on all of the downrange weather. Oh, it looks like we're seeing some people start to make their way into the crew access arm now, so we should see them get that Dragon side hatch open in just a few minutes. But as a reminder, we'll be looking at weather around the launch pad and weather downrange in their flight path on the way to orbit, and that's always checked just in case they have to do any kind of emergency maneuver and land down in the Atlantic Ocean. We will be making sure that the weather is at acceptable levels all the way until they're into space. So you can see the team coming down now. Should see the hatch open momentarily, and then we can begin to get Bob and Doug out of the Dragon spacecraft.
And again, we are staying live until Bob and Doug are safely out of Crew Dragon. You can see on your left-hand screen the team getting ready to open the hatch for them and help them out of their seats.
And at this point, the launch escape system has been disarmed. That was done after we successfully offloaded all of the propellants from the first and second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. There are propellants loaded into Dragon, so the teams look like they were just doing what we call kind of a sniff test, so using a portable detector just to assess the atmosphere around the Dragon capsule itself before they get the hatch open and bring Bob and Doug out.
All of this is standard safety procedures for egressing the vehicle. This is to ensure the safety of the crew, as well as Bob and Doug.
Dragon SpaceX for status.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the closeout team is at the White Room. They are configuring the crew arm for egress, expected to take no earlier than 10 minutes.
Okay, 10 minutes, thank you.
It should be just about 10 minutes. As a reminder, they're in the White Room. We walked through that a little bit earlier in our coverage this morning. The White Room named simply because of its color, and that's something that started all the way back during earlier Gemini missions. And that is literally the last place on planet Earth where astronauts are standing before they get loaded into this vehicle. It has an environmental control apparatus and a seal that it can put right up against the Dragon spacecraft just to keep all of that dust, dirt, Florida humidity
And Dragon
out of the
SpaceX,
capsule.
we're right at 3 hours in seat rotation. I just wanted to check in with you on comfort levels.
I'd say no changes, Jay. It hasn't been too bad at all.
Copy all.
And obviously at this point, with the launch escape system disarmed, we have loosened up straps and gotten our feet out of the straps on the bottom of the seat, so it's a little more comfortable anyway.
Copy all. Looks comfortable.
Right now, the closeout team just going to take a couple of minutes to configure the White Room. They'll set up a seal between it and the Dragon spacecraft just to make sure we're not letting anything from the surrounding environment get into that spacecraft, which is kept very pristine, obviously, for the crew members once they're inside. They have a small bridge that just connects the crew arm to the capsule itself. Just making sure they have a nice clear path for their entrance and exit from the spacecraft. So it should just be a few more minutes. We'll see that hatch get opened, and then our crew members can start to make their way out. And you heard seat rotation. They rotate the seats prior to their actual flight to where they're a little bit more parallel to the ground, and that just puts them directly in front of those displays. We'll see them rotate down, just giving them easy access to get out of the capsule.
And as Dan mentioned, we want to keep FOD out of the capsule. FOD is foreign object debris, so that's basically anything that does not belong inside of the vehicle. So not just like dirt and dust, but just anything that was not meant to be inside of there should not be there. So we are doing everything as a standard procedure to make sure that we do keep FOD out, especially since this is going to be another attempt and another opportunity for FOD to enter the vehicle. As they're exiting, we still make sure that we keep everything basically like a clean room.
Dragon SpaceX, you may hear some vehicle venting in about 20 seconds.
Copy.
Ya, entonces en resumen, estos guanes no se van a tirar porque el clima y la weá y la weá. O eso es lo que entendí, pues, debería haber sido hace como una hora, así que... Sí, po. Ya, po. F nomás, po. Screw. Ya será, po. No se hizo. Adiós. Gracias por esperar inútilmente junto a mí.